We're here with John Ruby, and John just opened his first virtual solo show at Robert Berry Gallery back in the middle of June. Things have been very good, and I keep hearing a lot of the same questions from people. So collectors are asking very specific questions. So I figured, John, if we could just have a little chat and basically get the answers that everyone wants to know straight from you. How does that
Sure.
sound?
No, sounds great. And glad to hear that there's interest in myself. It's always nice to hear as an artist. So yeah, whatever you want to hit me with, and whatever the world wants to hear of me, let me know.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I guess a lot of people are asking about your early days as an artist. So I know you went to the American Academy of Art in Chicago. You know, we've talked about that many times. Every time I come to Chicago, we're on the train, and you're always like, I used to do this as a teenager, as a kid, and would do this all the time. And I know that that's really where you started to do all of your technical side with the photography, the printing, painting, and you kind of put all that stuff together. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, thanks, Robert. I went to the American Academy of Art, and I was taking illustration and photography as my majors. So that's where I kind of like developed putting the two together. Let's put it that way. I always enjoyed photography, and because it's quick. It's a quick image. You get gratification right away from that image. And then the painting, which it takes longer and more time consuming, but then you get the thrill of all that, of putting all this time into something. So the two together really kind of always has been very pleasing to me as an artist, because it's something that a lot of people weren't doing at the time when I was going to school. Either you want to be a photographer or an illustrator, and I probably was one of the first people I know, at least that was kind of combining the two. And I started doing like retouching on my own. And that's when I found out that, there's something that exists out in the world. It's called photo retouching. And that's what kind of started me. I took two of my best skills and tried to put them together to get something new and different, and try to develop something so that when I get out into the world, I was something different than just a photographer or an illustrator. I kind of knew a little bit of everything. So and I try to keep doing that always. It's just taking all my talents and abilities and trying to pile them up and get the best results I can from that.
Well, how would you say from the educational side, where you learned at a formal academy to do those specific things, would you done differently, or what did you enjoy doing from that time where you were probably in the dark room for, 20 hours a week? And you were painting 20 hours a week, you were doing photo retouching 20 hours a week, and probably not sleeping, as a young college student.
No, sleep was something I didn't do much of. When you're going to art school, it really is. It's a full-time thing. I mean, I was up many nights, and yeah, I don't know. The retouching, the photography, there's so many avenues there that you're constantly doing busy. I mean, it's
Constantly learning new things and new technologies.
Right. And and I love the darkroom. When you mentioned the darkroom, that was where you can really get creative, which now you have digital darkrooms like Photoshop, and that's where I'm mostly playing around with now, obviously, is a digital darkroom. But there are things that you kind of achieved in a darkroom that that's that hands-on stuff that we just don't have anymore. And I think a lot of the younger kids, a lot of the younger artists kind of miss out on that a little bit by just jumping right into digital. I always, first stuff I did was transparent watercolors that were realistic. I just didn't jump right into abstracts. I think
you had to learn from nature first and learn from the foundational material.
Yeah, and I think you need to develop your skill as an artist, as a renderer even, and be able to paint a little of everything and do different types. I think, a lot of these artists just kind of jump into things, and then they just stick with that one thing and they get comfortable with it. And, and I like to, live outside the box and be uncomfortable with my art and explore it. And then when I find something that comes back or the next day after I see that I worked on it all night, and then I look at it in the morning, there's some gratitude and some like, wow, I accomplished that, and didn't realize, that I could even do that type of stuff,
And you were kind of enjoying the process, enjoying the moment.
Exactly.
And coming back to being inspired by your own stuff. When you see it the next day, you go, wow, I made that. I made these new pieces.
Exactly. I mean, even when a musician's just writing new music, I mean, when it's just coming out and it's rolling out of you, you don't question it. You just go with it, And I think that a lot of artists question too much their abilities and question who they are, and always are just questioning how good it is, this, that. You just got to flow with it. I mean, the reason too I did a lot of art was just because I went through a lot of hell in my life, and it really just it saved me from a lot of situations where it made me focus on good things and good thoughts instead of life's bad things, which is there's a ton of it these days, especially. So you got to kind of just stay focused and let things happen and develop, and just let it come out of you without, naturally, without being too
Definitely.
contrived. Or, I think a lot of artists too are just constantly, you know, taking others' ideas and just, doing, uh, a lot of stealings going on. It seems to me. Let's just put it that way.
Well, it's
Uh,
going back to the positivity, staying on that positive angle. There's definitely a lot of positivity in these new paintings in your solo show, Impressionable. And I know over the years, I've known you for over a decade now, and I've seen you as a photographer, doing printmaking, doing painting, and always combining these new things. So let's get right into the fact that you have your new show right now. And let's talk about the inspiration of these specific new paintings. We have 9 great rock and roll icons. And where did all these come from? What was the inspiration?
yeah, you know what? The inspiration obviously is just the new works itself, and exploring these new works, and showing the new works with the people that I grew up with. I've been a huge music fan all my life. I have older brothers and sisters that were like 10 years older.
Mhm.
So my sisters were listening to the Motown. My brother was listening to anything from Pink Floyd to Mahavishnu Orchestra to a lot of obscure stuff. So a lot of young kids that I were growing up with, they were listening to maybe like Kiss or something, and I was listening to all kinds of music, and the music's always just inspired me. And as a young kid, I used to just listen to music and draw, and so I mean, the music's always been there for me, and so I would just wanted to show that I love music. These were people I grew up with, and I think it lends itself well to the art itself. Because of the art, as you got to see it from a distance to really see the figures per se.
Mhm.
It's kind of figurative abstract in a sense. Um, so there's that distance factor, which it plays well, I think, into these older icons. Because we don't know them really. We never knew them personally. We just know them through photographs.
Exactly. Or the
So and
Woodstock video.
right. So and the closer we've gotten to these people, at least where we thought we were close, we don't really still know anything about them. So I mean, that's my whole subject matter with this art is that, I mean, standing back from art and standing back from life to view it from a distance is
Mhm.
what it's all about, I guess. And I thought these pieces lent itself well. And again, just being the huge music person, so I thought, the two lent itself well for the show.
To go hand in hand. So
Yeah.
your influences as a teenager and as a young adult with the music side, always drawing, and just being personally inspired by that. So you mentioned that being inspired by your own work. So you're being inspired by these musicians who you've been looking up to, and even my generation. I'm a generation or so behind you, and I'm still looking up to these same people, these same generations that have really made a difference. Someone like David Bowie is still a hero to me. Jimi Hendrix is still one of the best guitar players I've ever heard in my entire life. And so I
So
guess when the last time I came to visit you was back in 2017 in the fall, and you were just starting this new body of work. So I guess ultimately is what people really want to know is what do these paintings look like in person? Because I've seen them. We put them in a virtual show, but for someone to really understand the surface, I guess coming right from you might be the best way to understand that. So what do these paintings look like in person?
yeah, no, yeah, thanks, Robert. Yeah, they are very textured orientated pieces. What I'm doing is pretty much laying down a lot of white paint with syringes, believe it or not, because it gives kind of a quality of like string, you know, and I've always been like a string theorist. I like quantum theories, the whole, so, you know, the whole string theory brings life together, you know, and these images are kind of about people and how, you know, we're all kind of connected as one in a sense too with this.
We're all in this
But
together.
yeah, and obviously the texture makes these paintings, because they're so layered with paint, is how I get this dimensionality out of it. And then through that dimensionality is how I'm photographing it, is how I'm acquiring my digital aspect of it. It's got to have this correct lights and darks for it to work per se. Uh, you know, but the cool thing about this stuff is that, you know, you really do need to see it live. I mean, everybody I've showed it to, most people that have seen it said, wow, you really need to experience it, you know, up close and from a distance. And it really is that, because they are something that, you know, if I photograph it, you'll just see the image kind of as just that one shot, and you'll see the face and you know, but if you're standing in front of it, it's kind of more abstract completely. And then there's a little trick where, you know, if you pull your phone out and then you put it onto the piece, you'll see the image right away. And what's that doing is it's condensing the image to a smaller size, so
Mhm.
that the condensing part is what makes these images happen. Because I'm kind of painting them in a sense where they're hollow, in a sense, where only till you see it from a distance do they fill in.
Mhm.
So when you're up close, you know, it's abstract, and from that distance, they're actually photographic, which is something that really hasn't been done. Most art, you know, everybody wants to walk up and get close to. My whole thing is getting further away, you know, and that
Interesting.
just kind of lends itself to life nowadays, where, you know, again, I think people need to stand back from life a little bit and view things from a distance, not just always look at it up close, whatever that is, you know.
Because these days people really do want to get close to it. So ultimately, is what you're saying is that when you do get close to them, they really can't see much more. The paintings become very abstract, and you really can't see the full picture.
Exactly, and then you're going to dwell on, you know, all that texture, because there's not a person that I know that hasn't seen these that says, "Can I touch them?" That's the biggest thing, because they are so textured and so colorful, and they're very unique. I mean, these things take, it's a process. It takes me quite a while to get this down, and the process is always a new experience for me. I mean, I'm still developing it. One little tweak differently in the process, and I can get a little different results. So, you know, there's a lot to it. So I get excited too when I'm putting this stuff out, because I never really know what exactly I'm getting. I just kind of know I'm getting in the ballpark of where I'm going, and then when I see something I like, you know, I go with it.
Mhm.
But it's still all new, and it's fun. But yeah, they're interesting to see. I mean, I think anybody who sees them in life would really appreciate them much more than seeing them on a screen. But I'm amazed that we've had such great success with this
Absolutely,
show.
yes. Well, it seems to
Uh,
be people really understand it. From the, the installation views, it seems to be people love the figure. They're, I love John Lennon, or Jimi Hendrix is my hero, and people respond to that. And when they're getting to the detailed views and the pictures where they can really understand it, the short video clips have been very helpful. I think people are really starting to understand it from just the short videos. So of course, when a couple of the paintings went to their new homes, the collectors loved the imagery. And now when it's installed in their house, they love it even more, because now they understand the picture, the subject matter, and now they can really appreciate the texture. So that's something that's been very interesting, for me as a gallerist, to see that people are really loving these pieces. And then, so coming back to the people loving the subjects, it's a lot of people are directly loving John Lennon, David Bowie. And then I guess what we really should get into is that the works previously of yours have been very abstracted. So just, I have a piece that I think I acquired from you back in maybe 2013 or 2014.
yeah,
So this is
something
yeah,
like
it's a
that.
very abstract piece. And then for these new works, you're doing something very figurative. So I guess, can you discuss a little bit about that and how you chose these particular rock and roll figures? Why did you choose Jimi Hendrix? Why did you choose Janis Joplin? And mostly you went from abstract, like the abstract
Oh,
thing.
yeah, that's it. The abstract thing.
Yeah,
Okay. Ask me about the abstract thing again.
yeah, the
Yeah.
abstract coming into figurative. So
Okay.
basically, how did you get from figurative, the abstraction into figurative? And then basically you can talk about the fact that, when you get up to these, they really are abstract pieces, kind of almost like a Chuck Close, that when you
Right.
back up, they become figurative, but when you're close, they really still are abstracted. So that was more of like a natural progression.
Exactly. I think you hit it right on the nose there without me even saying too much, truthfully. Yeah, no, that's exactly it too. And I always loved abstract art, but I've always been, truthfully, before, especially in art school, I love doing portraits. I always loved human anatomy and so I'll never stop. I'll never just be an abstract artist. I'll never be just a figurative artist. It's kind of more always on an experimental level, wherever it takes me. What my new art is doing is where I'm going to go. And if it's figurative, like you said, in mentioning figurative, as much as they're figurative, up close to abstract, and that was my whole goal, is trying to find something that is like that. And Chuck Close is probably the closest thing that I know of, who I adore. I think the man's a genius. Um, is doing something along those lines and has done something along those lines. Now I'm just kind of doing things more on a technical, higher level than he is, more so. He's just a true painter. I like to mix it all up. And that's where the whole
Bringing the
process is.
technology a little less intuitive and a little more on your technical background, where you
Yeah,
understand color theory, you're a master in Photoshop and digital manipulation, photography, and now you can really create these technical, basically, I would say, masterpieces.
wow, that's very nice to hear, and I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, man. I don't know of anybody else doing what I'm doing, and I'm trying always just to strive for that. It's for me. It's I just have to prove to myself. I really don't care about a lot of things in general, what anybody thinks of what I'm doing or not. I mean, I'm just trying to prove to myself that my ideas in my head, I can get to finish these things and get what's in my brain out into the real world. And I got so many more ideas that I want to keep going and doing. And I'll never be that artist that's going to just do the same piece, or the same look all the time.
Over
I
and
mean,
over and
I
over
like
again.
this new look, and I'll go with it for, I'm going to keep going with the new look. But in the same time, even while I'm doing these paintings, I'm doing other paintings. I'm usually working on 3-4 different things at once. That's just how I work, and that's how I like to work, because
That's why you don't sleep too.
that's why I don't sleep. Actually, yes, exactly. But why one thing's drying, the ideas are always rolling, so you got to kind of keep flowing, and you can't just, I like to break it up, even if I'm working on one thing, you got to kind of put that thing aside and re-look at it, maybe even a couple days later or a week later, I mean, Richter always talked about that, Gerhardt, meaning, when he did his paintings, he'd let them sit for quite some time, because he
Absolutely.
always talked about, like, one day later, it still looks good. 2 days later, it still looks good. But, in a year from now, will it still look good, And that's the thing I'm really excited about in my new pieces. I think they're very, when people have them in their homes, and somebody comes into their house, that painting is going to get noticed. I mean, people
Absolutely.
notice these things, and they take at different angles. People look at it and go, "Wow, how do you do that? How's that done with the camera? The whole." They're very open for discussion. They're unusual in that sense. So I'm always striving on that level to just try to keep going with different ideas. So to say I'm not going to go back to abstract or keep going with figurative, I'm gonna keep going with whatever technology takes me. Truthfully, technology took me to here, and I'll keep going with it. But I still want to always have my hands on the brush and my finger on the camera also. So and I love shooting just straight. It's kind of like music when you know 16 different instruments. You want to, even you're not the greatest maybe at the guitar, but you like to
Unless you're
play it once
Prince.
in a while. That's me, man. I like to do all kinds of oils, acrylics, there's not a media I don't embrace. I like them all. So why not mix them together and try to get something unique and something different that nobody else is really trying to do, And I really like the fact of mixing technology, like what came first, the egg or the painting in a sense, or what, how did I do that? I really want to be the artist or a musicians, as they say, where the musician themselves or the artists themselves look at my work, and I've been asked, I don't know how many times, how do you do this? Well, that's my art, I mean, it is, how do I do it? And I take pride in that because I've been doing this all my life. It's not something that just came overnight. And, so, when people ask me, can you tell me how you do this? Cause I'd like to do your style. Well,
They couldn't anyway.
yeah, exactly. I mean, people don't understand that the years that it's taken to develop and to be in this field for as long as I have. I mean, I know a lot about printing. I know a lot about photography. I know about, I keep up with the digital trends. You have to constantly be on your game all the time, especially in this world. And it's a costly world. These pieces are costly. They don't always work out. Sometimes in the first couple ones, I had to, tweak some things, do some things to get little different, variations of it that I like better, So
So
it's not just,
it's that constant drive for challenging yourself, finding new technologies. And I guess that's ultimately part of your story, whereas you always been trying to push the boundaries, find new things and do things that other people aren't doing. So I really think with these new pieces, you've really hit that home run where you're combining painting, you're combining photography, color manipulation, color theory. You have all these new things going on. And it seems for me, because I've known your work for over a decade now, that it's that constant drive that you're looking for that next thing. So it seems like that's ultimately the story you're trying to tell, is that you want to be telling the next story and the next story and the next story, where everything seems to keep getting either more technically accomplished, more intriguing for you, more fun for you, for the viewer, for me. And it's that constant forward momentum that you're really trying to get.
yes, I absolutely, you hit it right on the nose, Robert. That's it in a nutshell. I'm striving for myself, and hopefully people enjoy what I'm doing. But it's always, the buck stops with me. I try my best to do ideas that I think, will challenge me. And if I can pull it off, it's something then that's exciting and new that people haven't seen yet. At least technology wise and things like that. I don't see many people in the art world really pushing it, as hard as they could. It's sad because, we are in such a technically driven age. Yeah, people still just go back to the same old processes and things like that.
Same piece, the same spots, the same yada, yada, yada.
Yeah,
So
it's
I,
still brush and paint and, I don't know,
so I guess coming into the notion of discussing some other artists. So obviously I know your work very well. And from a lot of conversations I've been having over the past, few weeks on your show, people are seeing some Warhol references, some Richter references. And so what would you say, or who would you say are some artists that are inspiring you, either for this body of work or in general?
Yeah, good question. I love so many artists. I mean, I really adored a lot of the 60s abstract guys, de Kooning, Pollock, Um, Rauschenberg is probably one of my favorites back in the day, because I kind of relate to him a lot because of, he didn't stick with one style. He was constantly developing things and moving on. I mean, he did the silk screens before Andy did, and then he got tired of them, and then Andy took them from him. I like Rauschenberg because he made everything art almost in a sense. I really, and he was a photographer also. So he was a big one. But living to today that I really enjoy is Ansel Kiefer. He's a German guy.
Hmm.
He's just his textures, his colossal
Oh,
sizes.
they're major
Yeah,
paintings I've seen.
yeah, just I mean, his stuff isn't. You don't hear about it here in the United States, and it blows me away. I mean, the man is a genius as far as I'm concerned, and just the fact that his paintings, some of them are 30 years old and they're not even finished. The weathering he does, the textures. I love all that texture and weathering and that type of look that it just doesn't happen overnight. He's probably one of my all-time favorites living wise right now.
Because I've seen one of his major paintings at the MoMA that's been there probably since I was a kid, but it was something that, oh, that painting's great, but I never really got to understand the body of his work. And it wasn't until years later when I started going to Europe where I would visit a museum and, in Switzerland or Berlin, and all of a sudden I would see, 20 of these paintings that were just absolutely phenomenal with the texture, the multimedia, and there's always a little more that's going on. So there would be a landscape painting, but there would be actual chunks of nature, willow reeds, all sorts of other things going on. So I can see the combination of layering with digital, paint, Photoshop, a little bit of everything going into your work. And even in some of your previous work, I could see a reference to that as well.
Yeah, he's actually got a great documentary on YouTube, and you can see where he lives outside of France and his studio, which is pretty much a Disneyland for artists. I mean,
Mm.
it's just massive, and it's just the man is just. I mean, he's beyond anything as far as I'm concerned. This man's done a lot of time and effort into his work, and it shows. I mean, the great guys. I think you got to put your time into this stuff.
And the
Uh,
dedication, the heart, the passion, these are all things you see in his work and your work as well.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and I strive for that in the sense of, and I look up to guys like him. I mean, if there was one artist I'd love to meet and go to his studio, would be Ansel Kiefer's. I just think his stuff is just, there's just the grand size of it. And again, uh, he learns, his textures. He throws anything into a painting, and then the paint on top of it. So I gotta love
Hmm.
that for that. He's an interesting man too. I enjoy it, and his heritage being German, and I'm German. It kind of lends itself a bit. Not that that means anything either, but I enjoy him. So
Excellent. Well, I guess the next thought I would like to address a little bit with you is that we have a lot of artists looking at your work and following the new gallery now. So for someone who is just coming out of their MFA or just entering their undergraduate art career, what would you say? What would you recommend for a young artist to do today?
yeah, no, I would recommend new artists to not do what everybody else is doing. Is what I would recommend. There's you have to realize you are a young artist, and that you need to develop, and it takes time to develop and make lots of mistakes because you're going to learn from your mistakes. I think the best way to learn is from mistakes, and again, just doing your art on a constant level, and it's like even a musician. I mean, if you want to learn, just keep playing. Just keep painting. Just keep. Don't question yourself. Just do it.
Well, I think the old adage is to become a master, you need 10,000 hours of doing anything. So you're saying to these young artists, go to the studio, spend 10,000 hours making works, finding your voice, and after making all those mistakes, you'll come out with something fresh.
Absolutely, yes, yeah, I agree. I mean, you look inside yourself. Don't look around for answers or what visually makes you happy. I mean, bring a little of out of you something that you want to show the world. I mean, and that means diving into yourself a little bit. It's not just about painting itself either. It's an emotional process that we go through as artists. I think it's you're putting a little bit of you onto and throwing it out to the world. So don't be afraid of that, and as a young artist, and try to embrace it, but don't be afraid to make mistakes and go with the flow.
We've discussed a little bit more about your background, your early days at the academy. We heard a little bit about your inspiration for the new works. And I guess, is there anything else you'd like to share about your current solo show, Impressionable?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I'll be honest. I was amazed as how well this thing went down, and how during this times of all this chaos and craziness, that I was able to have a one man show, and it went very very well. And the feedback we've gotten so far,
It's been very
it's all very,
positive.
yeah, very very exciting. I really am quite pleased with everything, truthfully. And thank you for everything you've done. And I mean, we've known each other forever, but I was so impressed that you chose me to be the first guy in the show.
Well, that
So
wasn't
I
even a
thank you for.
question, John. That wasn't even a question.
So I really, really appreciate it all. But this is the sign of the times, man. What you're doing is like like what I'm trying to do. Stay ahead of the game, be technology driven. That's what this whole virtual gallery is about. It's just that people are buying things off of Amazon. So why
Mhm.
not buy things off of art? And if you can't leave your home, you still can buy art. And art always makes you happy. I really think that people need more art, especially in times now where there's so much going on. You can stay focused on things by having a beautiful piece in your house that makes you smile every day by looking at it and glancing at
Absolutely.
it. I think we need a little of that. So, but in the same token, I think the show went great. The response has been great. Can't
Well,
be
now
more
that
than
we have some
pleased.
more answers from you, I think everything will go well and finish up nicely. And I guess from my perspective, we were looking to do this a few months ago, and we finally launched during COVID. And it was probably the best thing that possibly could have happened because everyone's home, they're looking at their computers, they're sitting on the couch with a cell phone in their hand all day. And it's these times that people really needed art more than ever. It's when everyone's worried and the anxiety level is up really high. I've read that people are not sleeping as much, and what people really need is just to be inspired. So, just like the painting that I have of yours behind me here, it's something that I look at and that I enjoy every single day. So, instead of sitting in front of the computer all day, it's now find something that you really love, whether it's a particular painting, a photograph, if it's creating art like you do every day from morning to night. It's just really kind of find what you love. And that's something that I've really been trying to put forward as a message, is that art should be making you happy.
Well, and I think you know what, you're doing it right, Robert. You're the guy that's seeing that connection. That people do need art in their lives, and by doing this virtual gallery, is exactly that. People are just sitting at home, and I couldn't, like you said, man. I think the timing couldn't have been better in a sense. As crazy as it is, but people are at home and just staring at the TV and not really getting out as much and doing things. So, bring things home into your house that make you happy. And art is one of those things. And I think people need to at least have a little something, a little carrot in front of them these days to kind of keep them going through these trying times. Let's put it that way. So, and art does
Absolutely.
that. And again, I have to say that, Robert, you're ahead of the game by doing this virtual show. And I think more people are going to start jumping on your bandwagon. I hate to say it, but because it's such a great idea right now. I think art is needed more than ever, and why should it stop just because when technology can still bring it right to you?
Right to you on your phone, your computer. So I guess that leads us to the fact of you're going to have to start working on your next show. So of course, everyone's going to be very excited to see what you come up with, if it's a continuation of this technology, or if you go back to something completely different. So I just want to say thank you, John, for coming to speak with me. And hopefully everyone watching has gotten a little more understanding of your work. And if anyone has any questions, I guess please reach out. You can find John's work at robertberrygallery.com. So thank you very much for being here, John.
Oh, thank you, Robert, and a pleasure. And yes, and we will always talk again.
Talk
So
soon.